The choice was made. Michael had stepped into Amanda's world, but at what cost? With Chioma gone and the weight of his decision settling in, one question remains. Can he live with the life he chose? Or will the echoes of what he's lost haunt him forever? Michael's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a reminder of the life he was now living, a life of excess, opportunity, and the kind of power he had only dreamed of. Amanda had done it again. She had swept him further into her world, and the more he resisted, the stronger her hold became. The luxury of her world was intoxicating, and soon, it wasn't just the suits, the cars, or the lavish dinners that began to define him. It was the way Amanda looked at him, like he was her next project to mold, to shape into someone who could thrive in the world she controlled. Michael sat at the plush table of yet another high-end restaurant, the city's skyline sparkling outside the windows. He'd gotten used to the routine. Dinner with Amanda, meetings with powerful business figures, and a conversation with someone who could make a difference in his company's future. It had all become a blur, a whirlwind of faces, names, and promises. Amanda leaned in closer, her voice smooth as she asked, "How are you feeling about the investors? You've got a real shot at changing everything with the right connections." Michael barely heard her words. He wasn't distracted by her beauty or the lifestyle she presented. No, it was the weight of what he had left behind that clouded his thoughts. He could feel the distance between him and Chioma growing every day. It wasn't that he didn't care, he did. But Amanda's world was alluring, so damn tempting. It felt like everything he had ever worked for was now within reach, but at the cost of everything he once held dear. "I think I need to take the next step," Michael said, finally forcing his mind back to the conversation. "I think I'm ready." Amanda smiled, a smile that seemed to say she had known that all along. She had been patient, waiting for him to come to this conclusion, to let go of the life he had once dreamed of and fully embrace the one she had offered him. "Good," she said. "I knew you would." The conversation turned to business, but Michael's mind kept drifting back to Chioma. She had been sending him texts, but they were short, distant. He knew she was hurt, but he didn't know how to make it right. His relationship with Amanda was moving forward, but with each success he achieved, the more his conscience screamed at him. But the truth was, Amanda had become indispensable. She was now a part of his life, and every decision seemed to draw him further into her world. As she discussed the next steps for his career, Michael felt both the weight of her influence and the tug of the life he had abandoned. Back in his small apartment, things were different. The absence of Chioma was a constant presence. Her side of the bed remained untouched, the familiar scent of her perfume still lingering in the air. But it wasn't the apartment that felt off. It was the silence that had fallen over everything they once shared. Chioma had tried to reach him, to make sense of what was happening between them, but every conversation had turned into an argument. Michael was busy. Too busy to talk. Too busy to be there. The distance between them had only grown, and with each passing day, Chioma felt more like a stranger in his life. One afternoon, she stood in front of the boutique she worked at, her eyes red from crying. She had seen the way Michael had been drifting, seen the way Amanda's world had consumed him, and it hurt more than she cared to admit. She had loved him with everything she had, and yet, she was slowly losing him. She knew Amanda was powerful. She could offer Michael everything Chioma couldn't: wealth, luxury, a life of ease. Chioma had always been willing to work hard, to be there through every struggle, but it seemed that wasn't enough anymore. She wasn't enough. The thoughts spiraled in her mind until she couldn't ignore them any longer. Chioma decided to confront him, to face the reality she had been trying to avoid. But as she stood in the doorway of Michael's apartment that evening, her heart was heavy with the uncertainty of what she would find. The man she loved was slipping through her fingers, and no matter how much she loved him, she couldn't stop him from making the choice he had already made. "Michael," Chioma said, her voice shaking as she stood before him. "I don't know who you are anymore. You've changed. You're not the man I fell in love with." Michael looked at her, guilt rising within him. He wanted to tell her that he still loved her, that none of this was her fault. But the words stuck in his throat. Don't you see it? Chioma continued, her voice now filled with desperation. She's pulling you away from me, and I can't compete with her, Michael. I can't. I'm not like her. I don't have what she offers. Michael wanted to reach out to her, but he didn't know how to fix what had been broken. He had made a choice. He had taken Amanda's hand, and now there was no turning back. But the weight of Chioma's words hung in the air, pulling at him. Amanda's pursuit became more direct. It wasn't just about business anymore, it was about ownership. The more time Michael spent with her, the more he began to feel like he was being shaped into the man she wanted him to be. And while he had once seen that as a benefit, now it felt like a cage. You're my project now, Michael, Amanda said one evening as they walked through the city, the cold air biting at their skin. And I don't let my projects fail. Michael couldn't deny that part of him had wanted this. Part of him wanted the power, the recognition, the success. But part of him still ached for the life he had left behind. He wanted Chioma. He wanted their future together. But it felt so far away now, a distant dream that he couldn't grasp. He glanced at Amanda, her eyes filled with determination. She wasn't just offering him a business opportunity. She was offering him a new life, one that came with everything he thought he had ever wanted. But the cost was too high. He couldn't live in both worlds. And the more he tried to split his time between them, the more the conflict tore him apart. Amanda showered him with lavish gifts, promised him a future of untold riches. She took him to parties, to meetings, introduced him to the elite. The lifestyle she offered was intoxicating, but Michael knew it came with a price. He had to lose something in return. He had already lost Chioma. The tension between Amanda and Chioma came to a head one fateful evening. Both women had grown tired of being in the background, waiting for Michael to make his choice. And finally, the confrontation was inevitable. Chioma stormed into Amanda's penthouse, her eyes burning with rage and frustration. She was done with waiting. She was done with being sidelined in a life that was no longer hers to share. Amanda, sitting confidently in her pristine office, turned to face her. I know what you've been doing, Chioma spat, her voice trembling with anger. You've been pulling him away from me, and you don't even care about him. You just want him as another trophy, don't you? Amanda stood up, her posture regal, her eyes unwavering. I care about his future. I care about his potential. You can't offer him what I can. You can't give him the life he deserves. Chioma's hands shook with the weight of her words. I've been with him through everything. I've seen him at his worst, at his most vulnerable. And you think you can just swoop in and take him? You can't have him. I already have him, Amanda replied, her voice cold. He made his choice. Michael stood frozen in the doorway, his breath shallow, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. The weight of two pairs of eyes bore into him, Chioma's, wide with desperation, and Amanda's, sharp with triumph. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating, as if time itself had conspired to trap them in this moment. Chioma took a hesitant step forward, her hands trembling at her sides. Michael, her voice cracked, her pain evident. She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. Tell me it's not too late, Amanda scoffed, folding her arms as she shifted her weight onto one leg, her posture exuding confidence. Oh, Chioma, she said smoothly. Haven't you realized? It was over long before you ever knew. Michael's chest tightened. The walls of his world seemed to be closing in, squeezing the air from his lungs. He had thought he wanted this, the luxury, the power, the untouchable status that Amanda's world had promised him. But now, standing between the woman who had stood by him through everything and the woman who had pulled him into this new life, he felt paralyzed. Amanda stepped closer, her fingers grazing his wrist. You don't have to explain yourself to her, she whispered, low and enticing. You've already made your choice. Chioma's heart pounded. Michael, look at me. Really look at me. Do you love me? Do you love her? His mouth opened, but no words came out. The truth clawed at him, desperate to escape, but fear held it back. His silence was a dagger, its blade pressed between them, cutting deep. Amanda smirked. See? He doesn't have an answer because there is no question. We're building something real, Chioma. You need to accept it. A heavy silence followed, stretching unbearably long. Michael could hear the faint hum of the city outside, the muffled honk of a distant car horn, the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. Every second a painful reminder that time was running out. And then, a whisper of a thought slithered into his mind. What if, in choosing one, he lost everything he ever truly wanted? Chioma's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. If you walk away from me now, Michael, you will regret it. Amanda's grip tightened on his arm. Don't listen to her. His pulse thundered in his ears. He felt like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath his feet. No matter which direction he turned, the fall was inevitable. Then, as if summoned by fate, his phone buzzed in his pocket. The sharp vibration against his thigh jolted him back into reality. Slowly, he pulled it out, his fingers trembling as he read the message flashing on the screen. You think you have a choice, Michael? Think again. His blood ran cold. His gaze darted to Amanda, then to Chioma. Who'd send it? What did it mean? Chioma noticed the change in his expression. What is it? Amanda leaned in, her voice a hushed warning. Michael, don't let distractions ruin what we've built. His mind raced. He suddenly realized he was not just caught between two women. He was caught in something much bigger, something far more dangerous. A game was being played, and he was merely a pawn. Swallowing hard, he looked up, his decision no longer just about love but survival. I need to know the truth, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. No more lies. Amanda's expression flickered for the briefest moment. Uncertainty, or perhaps fear. Chioma exhaled sharply, hope sparking in her eyes. But before either woman could respond, the front door burst open. The shadows of two figures filled the doorway. And then everything happened at once. Gunshots echoed through the apartment, sharp and deafening. Michael instinctively ducked, shielding Chioma as she let out a scream. Amanda's eyes widened in shock as she stumbled backward, clutching her arm where a bullet had grazed her. The two masked figures stepped forward, their weapons trained on them. Michael, one of them growled, their voice deep and menacing. We warned you. Michael's heart pounded against his ribs. His mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. Who were they? What did they want? And how was Amanda connected to this? Amanda's expression hardened as she straightened herself. You don't scare me, she spat. The taller of the two figures chuckled darkly. Oh, you should be scared, Miss Amanda. You made promises. Promises you haven't kept. Michael glanced at Amanda in shock. What are they talking about? Amanda didn't answer. Instead, she took a step closer to the men, her hands raised in surrender. Give me more time, she said quickly. I can fix this. Chioma's grip tightened on Michael's wrist. Michael, we need to get out of here. One of the masked men turned his attention to Chioma, his gun now aimed at her. She doesn't belong in this, Michael. But if she stays, she becomes collateral damage. Michael clenched his fists. Every nerve in his body screamed for him to fight back, but he was unarmed, outnumbered, and completely in the dark about what was really going on. He had to think fast. Amanda's eyes darted toward the hallway. Michael, listen to me. If you want to make it out alive, do exactly what I say. Chioma glared at her. Why should we trust you? Because I'm the only one who knows what they really want, Amanda said, her voice dangerously calm. And if we don't act now, none of us are walking out of here alive. Michael felt his stomach twist. He had walked into this apartment thinking he was choosing between two women. Now he realized the choice was much bigger than that. It was a choice between life and death, and he had only seconds to decide. Suddenly, the masked man on the left stepped forward and grabbed Amanda by the collar. Enough talking. We take her now. Amanda gasped, struggling against his grip. Michael, don't let them take me. Michael's mind reeled. He turned to Chioma, her face pale with fear. Every fiber of his being told him this was the moment. His decision had to be made now. The weight of everything pressed down on him. Then, an idea struck him. He reached into his pocket, feeling the cool metal of the keychain Chioma had given him long ago. In one swift motion, he hurled it at the light switch, plunging the room into darkness. Gunfire erupted, but Michael was already moving, grabbing Chioma's hand and pulling her toward the back door. "Run!" he shouted. Amanda screamed, her voice lost in the chaos. Michael hesitated for a split second. Should he go back for her? But the sound of footsteps closing in made his decision for him. Survival came first. Chioma stumbled beside him as they dashed through the narrow corridor, the echo of gunfire chasing them. Michael's heart pounded. They had to escape. They had to find out who was behind this. But one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story and want to see the final part of the drama, comment part 3 as the tension rises. Don't forget to like this video and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.